Welcome to Allies or Enemies. I'm Jess.
And I am Sean, and today we are talking about space-themed games. We're going to be doing our top 10, counting down our all-time favorite games set in space or about space, but we aren't going to be talking about IP games. So there aren't going to be any Star Wars or Star Trek or Dune. And it's not because we don't like them. It's because we like them too much, and this whole list would just be that stuff. So we're not going to do any of those. We're just going to do other space-themed games.
And even without those, we still had a ton of space games, and it was really hard to narrow it down to 10. We both ranked them, we smushed them together, and this is our combined top 10. Let's get to it. Number 10 is Ganymede, and we first played this at our very first AirCon years ago. And since then, it has really become one of our go-to light, quick games. At 2 players, we can play this in like 20 minutes. And you're drafting cards, trying to get people onto Earth, from Earth to Mars, and then onto Ganymede. But when you take a tile or a card, you're able to get these bonuses if that matches any ones that you already have. And it can be really satisfying if you can pull off like a whole bunch of bonuses.
Yeah, there's a ton of combos in this game, and it's a pretty simple game because you're just drafting a thing, a card or a tile, and then you're adding that to your tableau. But every time you add something, it kind of triggers a bunch of other little things, and turns are super quick in this. So those aren't like huge combo chains, but still, it's just really rewarding moving those guys and just figuring out like the exact combination that, oh, I need a red and yellow because there's a red and yellow card, so I can take that, and then that's going to move them, and then that's going to move this. And it's super quick, super fun, and it's about the Galilean moons, which I weirdly am like obsessed with. So I love the theme as well. But that is our number 10. Number 9 is Shackleton Base, and we're going from a real light, quick game to kind of the exact opposite. This is a big boy. We got a few of those on this list, but this is definitely amongst them. And the cool thing in Shackleton Base, first of all, just the overall game's interesting. It's about you're settling on the moon, and you're also working with corporations. So this is kind of a realistic, like you're gonna have these corporate pressures, you're gonna have strings with the money, but you've got all these different corporations you can mix in there. So you've got 7 different corporations. You're going to use 3 each game, and they all really change things. They just make this game super different.
Yeah, there's ones where you're trying to build a whole bunch of plants. There's other ones that you're like defending the moon because a giant asteroid is going to come. Other ones where you're trying to like send things off to Mars, so more tourism happens like off of other planets. Another one that's all about like building hotels on the moon. And there are these astronaut-looking tourists with these giant A's on their chests. But beyond just the corporations, there is so much going on. And it is our number 9. Number 8 is Pulsar 2849, which is a dice drafting game. And normally, I am not a huge fan of dice drafting games because it can be challenging to just not get the dice you want. But there are so many dice that are used and so many different things that you can do with those dice that it never feels like a wasted turn. Like one of the most fun things though is always like when you have your ship and you're going around the galaxy, you're visiting different planets and you get these planet bonuses. But beyond that, there's like 3 different types of tech that you can get. There's your homeboard tech, there's like a shared tech, there's these like satellites or something, all kinds of different ways that give you various like bonuses either right away or ongoing.
Yeah, and all of that stuff, this game has like so much variability in it. I think that's one of the things I like most, because those tech boards, there's 4, there's like an A, B, C, D, but then also there's 3 chunks of it, and you can mishmash those together. There's 4 different player boards that all have different stuff, and those all have 2 sides. There's just a lot of things that can push you down a lot of different paths. And like you say, it's nice that the dice drafting, basically all of the dice are usually useful in some sort of way. And they have this cool thing where when you're drafting the dice, it like changes the player order and it changes these end of round bonuses in this really interesting way. So I think it plays a little bit different than other dice drafting games. And that's kind of why I like it a little bit more. And it's space, which is why it's on this list. And it is our number 8. Number 7 is Voidfall, and I said earlier that Shackleton Base was a big boy. Well, this is the biggest boy. This is a lot. This fills a lot of table. This fills a lot of brain, and you're you're doing all sorts of spacey stuff here. So you got this big galaxy, you're flying around it, you're fighting bad guys, you're settling different things on different planets. You've also got your own home board that you're doing like 3 or 4 different things with. It's got tracks and cards you're tucking and texts and all sorts of stuff. And it's got this really great card system as well, where you've got a whole big hand of cards, and those let you do a bunch of things per card, and you have to choose 2 out of the 3, and you're picking like the order of stuff, so you got resources to use other stuff, and oh, it's like, it would be impossible to explain in this short of a period of time, but this is one of those games that feels like you feel like you've played something. It's like an event.
Yeah, and what I really like is because there is combat in this game, but it's deterministic combat. So it's never based on a dice roll. You know exactly going into it what the outcome will be. You just have to prepare yourself to try and put yourself in a good position. And there's just so many different ways to play because there are so many different maps where you're starting like really far from each other. You can also play cooperatively. And so for such a big game that has so much already, I mean, we still have so many of those maps we haven't even touched yet.
Yeah, and the co-op mode as well, we've only played that once or twice, and there are like, I don't even know how many, like 115 different factions you can be as well. I think that's the mathematical number. And they all play differently too, so there is a lot in this box, and it is our number 7.
Our number 6 is Race for the Galaxy, and this is by the same designer as Res Arcana, who's so good at doing so much with so few cards. Because in Race for the Galaxy, you can only play 12 cards, but the decision of which ones you play is so difficult because you're paying with cards to play them. And then the better cards are going to cost you a lot more cards, and you never really want to get rid of them. And then those cards will also be building your engine because they'll be activating on like certain actions that you're able to do on your turn.
Yeah, this is a modern classic. Like, this is a slightly older game for modern games, like 20-ish years old, but this really holds up. And you see a lot of stuff in this game in other games as well, especially that, like, how you play the cards. I don't know if it's the first one that did this, but this has got the mechanism where you've got a bunch of different cards that are your action cards. When you play them, everyone else gets to do that action, but you get to do a slightly better version of that action. And that is just, it's such a terrific mechanism. And the stuff that you're doing is all pretty simple. You're gaining more cards to your hand, you're playing this specific kind, you're putting out resources, you're selling those resources. But all of it just feels a little bit different, a little bit unique, and I kind of love that it looks like a smidge dated. I think that's almost part of the charm of this too, because it just reminds you like, oh, this really is a classic, and it is such a classic.
And it is our number 6.
Number 5 is Beyond the Sun, and this is a giant tech tree. That's really that's what it looks like. It famously is not the most beautiful game out there. It's really not, but it plays beautifully. It is such an interesting game. So you've got these cards in basically this giant tech tree. And as you go through the game, you're going to get more and more abilities as you put your tokens out on those different techs. And those are going to help you doing stuff on your player board. Those are going to help you on this kind of big area control map, other mini game that's happening, and those are going to help you with these awesome resource dice. And I think the dice are my favorite part in it. So you got these dice that like turn from suitcases to people to planes. They're like these transformer dice, and it's such a clever mechanism. So much stuff in this game is just really smart.
And it's interesting because the tech tree is full of worker placement spots that you're unlocking, and there's lots of different directions you can go in terms of increasing your military or your technology, and it can be a difficult decision whether you want to build on one that you know you want that action, or take a chance and reveal a new card that you don't quite know what you're going to get. And I just feel like there's a lot of different pathways, and it is our number 5. Number 4 is Planet Unknown, and the star of the show really is the Lazy Susan, which is filled with tiles. Because what that means is it allows everyone to play at once. On your turn, you get to pick where you want the tiles to be and which one you want, then everyone else has to take one of the 2 tiles in front of them. But it means every turn you're involved. And then once you put those tiles down, depending on the terrain, you get to bump up these different tracks, which give you various bonuses. And all of those tracks correspond to different corporations. So it's incredibly asymmetric. So it's really fun to like try different corporations, get different bonuses, and the planets are also asymmetric as well. So there's so many like different mixes you can have.
Yeah, there's so many combinations in this game, and they all play really differently. And some of those planets are stronger than others, some of those techs are stronger than others, but it doesn't really matter because this is also just a really quick game. It's a super replayable game. This is one that we've played with so many folks, and I think first of all, people are into it because it looks awesome. Because it's got that Susan, I don't even want to call it lazy because it does so much. It's got that hard working Susan. And then when they actually start playing it, you're involved all the time. Everything you do is giving you stuff. It's like constant dopamine hits. And it really is a terrific game. I'm excited actually to also find the expansion. We didn't Kickstart it, but I definitely want to pick it up when it hits retail too. And this is our number 4. Number 3 is SETI, and this one, maybe more than most of the others, feels like it really is inspired by real science. This is about the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, as you would guess from SETI, and you're doing all the sort of stuff you would think. You're sending out these probes, these satellites around, you're scanning, you're sending out like communication signals, you're landing on planets, you're orbiting planets. But the cool thing is, after a little while in the game, you actually do find alien life. And there are 5 different kinds of aliens that you can come across, and they all really shift the game. This is already this game with a whole bunch of really interesting integrated systems where there's really tight resources and a lot of stuff that we really enjoy in a game. But once you get these aliens, you add this whole other wrinkle. But it really is cool that there is all of this science like embedded into it, but then it's got this kind of fun of, well, here are these actual aliens. I love that.
Yeah, the designer Thomas Hollick is apparently like a real like space nerd, and you can definitely see the influence. And it is interesting because for the first part, you have no idea what aliens are going to be because it's turned face down. So it's only when it's revealed that you're like, oh, it's this one. And the cards are always so powerful. It makes such a big difference for how that like second half and later half of the game plays. And this is our number 3. Number 2 is Terraforming Mars, and this is another one that I feel leans into scientific realism, because the things you need to do, I feel like you would have to do to terraform a planet. You'd have to increase the oxygen, increase the heat, plant trees, and you're doing all of this through playing cards. And then the cards, it'll be things like you pull down an asteroid and that increases your heat, and you're able to build your engine. And because there's such a huge stack of cards, it's naturally going to lead you down different directions.
Yeah, and first of all, kudos, because this is the first time ever that Jess has talked about Terraforming Mars and has not said, do you know it's based on the novel Red Planet? Because she loves, even if we're playing this game, I'm like, do you want to play Terraforming Mars? And she's like, oh yeah, oh, did you know that this is based on the novel Red Planet? Apparently, it's based on the novel Red Planet, but it really does, because it has so many cards. There are so many different interesting paths that you can go down, and when you get a few of those different boards as well. This is one actually we're not big fans of most of the expansions except Prelude, which is kind of a necessary expansion, I think. But having those different boards, I think, makes a big difference, and having those 3D tiles, because the base game of this, famously not a looker. No one ever has said, Terraforming Mars, you know what I love? The components. No one has ever said those words, but with those 3D printed tiles, that makes a huge difference. It's one of the only games that we've done that to, where we've added that sort of extra thing. And it really makes a difference. Definitely, and it is our number 2. Number 1 is Gaia Project, and this one is not as realistic of a space game as our last 2, but it's a terrific one. This is one of my all-time favorite games. This is This is a game that we play an awful lot. And Gaia Project is you've got all these different asymmetric factions. I think this is something, you can tell we like asymmetric factions, but you got all these different asymmetric factions and you're traveling around, you're going to different planets, you're moving up different tech tracks. It's a lot of the stuff we've talked about in these other games, but I just think Gaia Project just does it that little bit better, where the system is just so tight. The rules overhead is not too crazy, but it has so many different parts you can move. And I think with the expansion, which we just picked up this year as well, I was really thinking this does not need an expansion. I'd said that so many times. Now that we got the expansion, kind of needed it. It's really, really good, and it adds these other just little tweaks, I think, that have made what I thought was a tremendous game even a little bit better.
Yeah, and I'm so glad this works for 2 players because it's based on the Terra Mystica system, which doesn't really, but I feel like in Gaia Project, there's a little bit more opportunity to build close to each other, which you really want to do because one of your key buildings is cheaper if you're next to somebody else, and everything is super tight, and I feel like you're just really scratching at points. So every round you have these different goals that will give you points, and you're really trying to time things so you're doing those actions in that round because you're just like every point I feel like is so hard to get.
Oh my goodness, yeah, I'm amazed at the end of this game that I have any points at all. And this is really a game too where you have to think like 6 steps ahead. Everything is like, okay, I'm gonna do this, then that's gonna move these energies around to this, and that's gonna get me this one more thing, because you always are like just at the edge of being able to do the next step. You have it just to that one resource, and then that next step has to get you exactly the right amount of resources for the next thing. This doesn't sound fun how I'm explaining it, but it is. It's just this really fun, kind of demanding, but interesting puzzle. And yeah, we just keep playing this. And
it is our #1 space game.
And that is it. Those are our top 10 favorite space-themed games of all time that aren't IPs. That's a catchy title, right? Please let us know any space games that you think that we missed. Also, let us know if you want what your favorite are of those IP games. There's Dune Imperium, Star Wars Rebellion. There are some terrific games that we were like, this is going to be the whole list, so we couldn't put them on.
Yeah, and thank you so much for watching. There are also a ton of games that we just haven't played yet. So Andromeda's Edge, I feel like would make this list, but we haven't played it yet. But do let us know, and please, as usual, like, subscribe, and hopefully we'll see you next time for another game.